I really don't know how these writers are pulling it off week after week, but this season of Dexter is shaping up to be in like the top 3 seasons. There literally has not been a bad episode this entire season. Episode 7, called Course Correction, was another absolute banger, so let's get into it. I'm Pamela, welcome back to the channel. In case you're new here, please subscribe to the channel. We're covering all things Dexter throughout this entire season of Dexter Resurrection. Today we're going to be recapping and reviewing episode 7. Please let me know your thoughts, leave a comment down below. How did you like this episode? So it opens up at one of Prader's mansions, and at the beginning here, he seems to kind of be unraveling just a little bit. Charlie is worried about the exposure out here, and Prader gets a little nasty with her. He says, "Do what I tell you to do." And then he also says, "I don't have time for Lowell's bullshit." But he does say it's been difficult because Mia took her own life in jail. So they all have some wine and toast to her memory. Prader says she left us far too soon, and internally Dexter says, did she choose to leave or was she taken out? And then we get this scene with Harrison and Elsa, and this scene, I was actually there when they filmed it. I shared a video here on the channel several months ago. This was, I believe, back in April. I was literally right there off to the side when they filmed this scene, and what's so crazy, this scene was maybe 60 seconds long, and it took them all day to set up for filming and taking multiple takes. I was there for hours on the set, and all of that work just for a minute-long scene. It's insane, the amount of work that they put into the show. Harrison reveals that he might want to go to college for something with criminal justice, and Elsa recommends Collings College to him. So now we're back at Prader's mansion, and Dexter decides to partake in eating meat. I was so happy for him, like, this man could not take it anymore. I've said in my past recaps, like, when Prader shows him the vegan food, he should have just said, like, oh, I'm not a full-time vegan, I just kind of enjoy some vegan meals occasionally. So I was just happy for Dexter that he's not limited to the vegan meals anymore. So now at the mansion, it's time for Dexter to do a little show and tell. He was expected to do a show and tell in episode 4, but he wasn't ready, so Prader approaches him in this episode and says, "You're hiding something from me." And initially I'm like, uh-oh, is he on to him? But he just meant like his trophies and his tools. But Al does do his show and tell first. We see him on camera stalking a girl with a ponytail. That's his whole MO. He's on a bike following this girl, and he pretends to fall and get hurt. And we see him on camera literally kill this girl. He strangles her. And Prader is just loving this. He is eating it up. Al is kind of an interesting character to me because he really is just like this goofy, bubbly guy, but he's this sadistic serial killer at the same time. He's not your typical killer in my opinion. He seems normal. And then Dexter is in a room by himself. He puts on his hoodie, getting ready for his show and tell, and he's practicing in the mirror. And this scene, oh my god, it was just so funny. Michael C. Hall really is just such a great actor. Honestly, in my opinion, he is one of the best actors of this generation, and it's a shame that he's not in more things. Obviously, he is super well known for being Dexter though. He really should be a bigger actor and be in more things. And he really shined in this episode during his actual show and tell. Like, I don't know, I think this was one of his best performances in the entire series, to be honest. And during the scene when he's practicing in the mirror, he's also talking with Harry. And Harry doesn't like what's going on. He doesn't like that Dexter is part of this boogeyman club, as he calls it. And Dexter says to him, "I'm a monster too." And Harry says, "It's different though." And Dexter says, "You turned your back on me. That's why you killed yourself after you saw what I did." Like after Harry walked in on one of his kills 20-something years ago. Now I do want to bring up a theory that I have that Harry didn't actually kill himself. I think it might have been Brian Moser, and I feel like they were kind of setting that up in season 1 of Dexter Original Sin. I did do a video on this back when Original Sin was airing. I will link it down below for you guys if you're curious. I feel like in season 2 of Original Sin, we might find out that Harry didn't actually kill himself. Obviously, Dexter won't find this out because to this day he still thinks Harry killed himself, but I think we as the audience might find out it was actually Brian. So now the reason that I loved Dexter's show and tell so much is because even though he was pretending to be Red and talking about himself as if he was Red, he was kind of low-key actually talking about himself, Dexter. The way that he puts this mask on and only the people that he kills see the real him. Something I thought was interesting is he says to Gareth, "What do you call your urge to kill? The great yearning?" And Gareth sort of looked like he didn't know what he was talking about, but then when Dexter said the great yearning, he was like, oh yeah. So I feel like this might be a different twin than the one who was at that first dinner in episode 4. Obviously we know there's 2 of them, they switch places, but we don't quite know who was who. And I feel like this twin in episode 7 was not the same one who was at the dinner in episode 4. So the twins might have called their urge to kill something different. I also think Charlie's reaction to what Dexter was saying was pretty interesting. She almost looked like sympathetic, or like she was understanding where he was coming from, which I do think is interesting because from what we've seen previously with her, she almost seems like disgusted by these serial killers. So Charlie is an interesting character, and I hope we find out a little bit more about her and some more backstory with her. Again, I just think it was so interesting to see Dexter in this setting amongst other serial killers where he is pretending to be someone else, but is still kind of being himself at the same time and revealing things about him under the guise of Red. And Michael C. Hall was just incredible in this episode. He deserves all of the awards. Next up, Angel is talking to the 2 detectives, Wallace and Oliva. He says, "Don't you think it's suspicious that the cameras went down?" Wallace is kind of resistant to what Angel is saying in this scene, which I find surprising because she has this gut feeling about Harrison and Ryan. And now that Angel shows up with this theory about Harrison's father, she's not really buying it. But it is interesting, of course, that Mia's fingerprints are in all of her trophies except the watch. So it does look like Wallace is coming around a little bit to what Angel is selling them. Now we are back at Prader's mansion, and Gareth is calling out Dexter for his presentation. The fact that he didn't share any real details about his kills or his methods. And he says, "It's funny how everything keeps going off the rails this year, and I keep asking myself what's different." So clearly Gareth is sort of on to Dexter, and this is an issue that Dexter is going to have to take care of immediately, which sure enough he does in this episode. So then Charlie shows up to pull Dexter away to go talk to Prader, and Prader absolutely loved Dexter's presentation because he was being so vulnerable. Prader talks about the fact that he lost his parents so young in a car accident, and he wrote the man who killed his parents while he was in jail, and the guy wrote him back. And he clearly didn't care about what he did. He chose to kill his parents to release demons after a fight with his girlfriend. So Prader is really opening up to Dexter in this moment, and I really loved this scene. The way that they showed some shots with the guy in jail. I also love the flashbacks with baby Harrison, little Dexter in the shipping container, Dexter killing the guy who killed his mother. And so the guy who killed Prader's parents, his name is Cooper, he was the first serial killer who shared his story with Prader, and Prader sort of felt connected to him. And Prader eventually would visit this guy in jail, and he began to enjoy their visits. And Dexter reminded him of his bond with Cooper. And he shares with Dexter the first letter that Cooper wrote Prader, which was the first trophy he ever got. I think it was really interesting to finally get some backstory on Prader. This whole season, we didn't meet him until episode 4, and we really didn't know much about him, so I really enjoyed the scene where he was opening up to Dexter. And then Angel shows up to where Dexter lives, and he meets Blessing. I was freaking out in this moment. Blessing says to Angel, Dexter's like family. Angel says, "Tell me about it." They briefly talk about Harrison and Dexter, and oh my god, I'm like, what the hell is gonna happen? So now we're back at the mansion once again. Dexter approaches Gareth in private. They're sort of like off to the side of the mansion. This mansion is massive, but everyone else, like Prader, Charlie, and Al, can pretty much see them. Gemini and Dexter are in private right now, but everyone else has a view of them. And Dexter says internally, honesty seems to be the best policy with Prader. Let's see what it does to Gemini. And in this moment, I'm just like, oh my god, what the hell is Dexter about to do? And Dexter says to Gareth, "I know your secret. You're a twin." I am losing my shit at this point, and Gareth says to him, "Stupidest thing I ever heard." Dexter says, "I was wondering how you pulled off those double kills. Was that you or your twin at the first dinner?" Gareth is getting a little defensive and says, "Stop talking before you say something you regret." But Gareth pretty much admits it, and he doesn't want to tell Prader. And he says that Dexter is the first one to figure it out. Dexter says to him, I envy you having someone with the same instincts. And then we do get a Biney mention. We get a little flashback with Brian Moser. Dexter reveals that my brother was like us, and we almost had the same relationship if we hadn't been strangers our whole lives. We found each other in our 30s, little late for brotherly bonding. And Dexter asks him, how have you kept your secret all these years? Gareth says, I can't get into specifics, but rule number 1 is never be seen together. We've developed a secret communication. And Dexter says, you mean like leaving notes in bookstores? And shit hits the fan at this point. Dexter says something like, can twins feel each other's pain? Did you feel a stab in your chest last night? Or a hot flash when I threw your brother's body into the furnace? Gareth is about to lose his shit at this point, and Dexter says, I have my own thing too. Killing killers. Gareth breaks the wine glass to attack Dexter, and Dexter kills him! And he makes sure that everyone can see that Gareth attacked him first. And Dexter says Gareth was acting weird and wanted to prove he was a visionary with killing Lowell, Al, and me. So Dexter is clearly setting it up so that everyone thinks Gareth killed Lowell. This is just typical Dexter. This is so reminiscent of the original show. And Al says, I always knew this guy was insane, which only helps Dexter at this point. Now Charlie has a gun on Dexter, and Prader tells Charlie to put the gun down, but she seems a little hesitant. I do think that she is suspicious of Dexter, and she's going to be the one to figure him out. Prader does say that this is all my fault, encouraging Gareth's delusions of grandeur. And Charlie says he always kills in pairs, and now he's picking off people one by one. Like I said, I do think she's going to be the one to figure out Dexter for sure. We do have this little clip from a previous trailer where Charlie has a gun on Harrison, so I think she's going to do some digging, figure out Dexter's true identity, figure out he has a son, Harrison, and I don't know. We only have 3 episodes left, like shit's gonna start to unravel. Now Harrison is at the college waiting to go on a little tour of the school. Dexter's supposed to meet him, but he's clearly running late because of everything that's happening at the mansion. But Harrison meets this girl who he's kind of like flirting with a little bit, but then he goes to a forensic psychology class to sit in and listen to the class, and of course, Detective Wallace is there. She's talking about the New York Ripper. We know from a previous episode that she has these like speaking engagements where she talks about the New York Ripper, who she is obsessed with, and we know that it almost cost her her job. And then Dexter does show up late. It's the first time Wallace is laying eyes on him. I'm freaking out at this point. So she's talking about the Ripper. She reveals that the Ripper stopped killing years ago, but his kills are still causing harm because he continues to contact and torment the family of his victims. I do think it's interesting that this killer doesn't kill anymore. Like, why is that? First of all, we don't know who the Ripper is. There's a whole bunch of fan theories out there, which I've talked about in past videos. Some people think that it's Detective Oliva. Some people think it's Blessing Kamara, which I think is a little crazy. Some people think it's Jonah Mitchell. But I'm kind of thinking it's a character that we don't know yet. And maybe he doesn't kill anymore because maybe he's on the older side. Maybe he just physically can't do it anymore. But I don't know. I wonder if they're setting this killer up for like a season 2 reveal. Wallace and the rest of the police are unsure of what weapon the Ripper uses. She says, we think it's a long crowbar-like tool. And Dexter, of course, knows what tool it is because he saw it at Prader's house. So we do see what it is as the audience, but I don't know exactly what you would call this tool. But Wallace says psychopaths are not capable of empathy or love. They are emotionally deficient individuals. And Dexter internally says, is this how my son sees me? And Dexter says to Harrison, I may not experience love the way other people do, but I know the way I feel about you is different than the way I feel about anyone else in the world. And Harrison says, thanks for that, Dad. I love these two and their relationship. I'm so happy that Harrison is being understanding of who his father is and not just like pushing him away. And now I don't know if I would call Dexter a psychopath because he clearly is capable of empathy and love. We've seen it before, but I suppose it's not necessarily in the same way other people experience it, just like Dexter said himself, but he definitely feels it. Now Claudette finally meets Dexter, and Harrison reveals that I'm thinking about becoming a cop. And Wallace says, so you're following in the footsteps of your father, and she reveals that Batista visited her. And Dexter brings up the Bay Harbor Butcher in this moment, and I am absolutely freaking out. He says how Angel was a good guy, but he spiraled after the Bay Harbor Butcher, and everyone had to move on, but some of us just couldn't. And then he got worse after he lost his ex in the line of duty. He never came back from that and kind of pushed us all away. I just think Dexter is playing with fire here. Obviously, he has to do what he has to do to kind of set Angel up to look like this crazy person who just can't let things go. Kind of like what he did with Dokes. Like, Dokes was obsessed with Dexter and figuring him out, and Dexter made it seem like to everyone else that Dokes was just this crazy obsessive person, even though he was right. And then Dexter says to Wallace, your crowbar theory is interesting, but the blood spatter is more consistent with a longer object, something with a handle that can be swung, maybe with a point at the end like a hook. And I just absolutely loved seeing Dexter in blood spatter action. It was so good to see him actually be able to be himself. You know, even though he doesn't work as a blood spatter analyst anymore, he has his identity back. He is Dexter Morgan to the public, to the rest of the world. So clearly it's a part of his history. And to see him actually sort of analyze a crime scene and, you know, do his little motions, it just felt so good. And then Dexter says to Harrison, you wanting to be a cop makes sense because a strong moral compass runs in the family. Deb and Harry would be proud. And Harrison says, no, it was you who inspired me. I do love the idea of Harrison becoming a cop. And then Harrison hits it off with this girl Gigi that he met, gets her number. And I also thought Dexter was so cute with his Collins College proud dad hat. And then Harrison asks him if he's worried about Batista talking to Wallace, and Dexter says he's not worried. Ryan's murder was already solved, and basically cops don't want to do more work than they have to. Angel's gonna try a few more times, but people won't listen to him. Now, I am a little worried that Dexter is being a little too overconfident and it might lead to his downfall. You know, just like we saw with Gareth. Gareth thought that he was always the smartest person in the room. This episode, Prader even says that this was his fault, giving into his delusions and grandeur. And the fact that Dexter has been one-upping all of these serial killers, he took down Gareth. In the previous episode, Dexter was like, who's number one now? And there was just something about Dexter in this episode where he seemed just a tad cocky. And don't get me wrong, I do think Dexter is number one. He is smarter than everyone else, but he needs to play it a little safe. I also think the fact that he got away with everything in Iron Lake that happened with Logan and Chief Bishop cleared his name, I feel like he's starting to think that he truly is untouchable. But now Prader is sort of becoming obsessed with Dexter. The way that Gareth thinks that he was Prader's favorite, I feel like Dexter is now becoming Prader's favorite. So I hope that this isn't foreshadowing that all of this is going to Dexter's head and it's going to be his downfall. Now Dexter is back at his apartment, and earlier when he killed Gareth, he pocketed a piece of broken glass. And I was kind of wondering why. And it was so that he could make a trophy out of it. He like extracts the dried blood from the broken piece of glass and puts it on the same slide with the other twin. And then Dexter hears salsa music coming from upstairs, and he says to himself, it's like I'm back in Miami. And then his smile drops and he says, Batista. And Batista is freaking upstairs with Blessing, teaching him how to dance salsa. I am absolutely freaking out. Dexter goes upstairs, and then Batista gives us his own version of surprise, motherfucker.
Surprise, hermano.
And they hug each other, and I'm just literally losing my mind at this point. Batista says, I taught this guy how to salsa almost 30 years ago. I was so hoping that they gave us a little flashback to Original Sin, because in Original Sin, we saw Batista take out Dexter to the bar and teach him how to dance. So then Dexter drives Batista back home and tells him, stay away from me, my house, my family, and especially my son. Oh my god, this scene was so intense. And then Batista says, you think I'm just gonna back off and let you get away with what you did to Maria, Dokes, and Deb? Dexter says, you don't want to get into this. Batista says, what are you gonna do? Pretty coincidental you became a driver just when there's a serial killer taking out drivers. That's a page right out of the Bay Harbor Butcher playbook. Oh my god. And then Dexter says, if I really am who you think I am, this can't possibly end well for you. I am absolutely losing my mind at this point. So we got this little clip in a trailer after episode 2. They gave us this trailer of what to expect coming up on the season. So it was a bunch of scenes from the entire season. We had no idea what episode some of these scenes were from. And we've been speculating and wondering here on the channel, who is he talking to? It crossed my mind that maybe it could be Batista, but I thought it sounded too threatening to be Batista that he's talking to. But sure enough, it was. This is insane. This was an insane thing for Dexter to say to him. And then Batista says, I'll take my chances. Dexter says, this is where you get out. And Angel gets out of the car, but leaves his freaking AirPods in the car to be able to track him. Oh my god, you guys, this was so intense. This was absolutely insane. So of course, Angel's going to be able to track Dexter at least for a little while, because I do think Dexter will find the AirPods eventually. I mean, you would think that it would cross Dexter's mind immediately to check the car for something, because, I mean, he knows Angel's onto him. And didn't Deb track him in the past? Didn't Deb put a tracker on Dexter's car? So he should just be wary and cautious. But yeah, another absolute banger of an episode. So intense. Some of the moments at the mansion were incredible. I loved getting some more backstory with Prader. Dexter killing the other twin was insane. I really enjoyed Michael C. Hall's performance with the whole show and tell thing, the actual presentation that he gave them, and also him just practicing in the mirror. I think this is some of his best acting in the entire series. Like I said, I do think Charlie is going to be the one to figure Dexter out. We only have 3 episodes left. This season is flying by, so I just cannot wait. So far, episode 4 has been my favorite. Episode 6 is probably my second favorite, and now episode 7 is probably my third favorite. I can't wait to rewatch this episode, honestly. Every week between episodes, I'll rewatch the previous episode, so I am looking forward to rewatching this one before episode 8 comes out. But definitely let me know your thoughts. I want to hear from you guys. Leave some comments. What did you think about this episode? What theories or predictions do you have for the future? What would you rate this episode? I give it, I don't even know, like a 9 out of 10? Definitely stay tuned for some more Dexter content. Next up, we're going to do a promo breakdown for the trailer for episode 8. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Please also go follow me over on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and I will see you guys next time.